is Marybeth Koszut. I'm an abstract painter and an assistant professor. And my artwork is really inspired by the forest landscape. I take natural elements such as rocks, roots, and tree branches and compile and build them up in my compositions to portray a tedious balance or a very fragile balance. And my work is really a metaphor for taking all the things in life and trying to create that fragile balance within us. And for me, specifically, a spiritual balance is very important. So the forest landscape is influential because that's an environment where I feel spiritually whole. So I also take a man-made element, these planks that I have in the majority of my pieces, and I add those into the composition to give added support and balance that we would supposedly get from one another in life as we grow spiritually. You can see that in my painting, Pathway 1. It's really the first painting that I sort of developed this idea, and I have these circular forms which are individuals inspired by the rocky landscape that build and support this literal pathway. And the pathway doesn't necessarily end in a new destination or result in somewhere new, but it's still showing movement and travel. And I think this is really important because this struggle for balance that we're all trying to attain in life, just all the different things that come at us, and how do we develop ourselves as a whole person that has stability. I like that idea because the pathway, it doesn't take you to a new location within the work. It's pretty much in the same plane. It shows movement, but physically you don't end up anywhere new if you travel upon it. So that's the same as this inner growth or spiritual growth, where you're traveling, but you don't necessarily physically end in a new location. So it's this idea of stationary travel or just inner growth. So I have these elements all stacked upon one another, and my process is really similar or complementary to the conceptual basis of my work as well. So you can see, like in Pathway 2, in a lot of the planks there's these stripes or striations that are formed from the process of building up layers and then wiping things away as I reconstruct the composition. So when I start, I have an idea of what I'm looking for, but then the marks and the painting kind of takes over on its own to develop the composition. So as I build things up and wipe away, I'm left with these unexpected moments that I work into the paintings. And that's sort of metaphorically like trying to attain balance in life, where we are building up our positive attributes and then wiping away faults or even sins, if you will, that aren't working for us. And then what's left are these beautiful moments, these unexpected things that you wouldn't have necessarily thought were possible or were visually imaginable coming out of your own mind. So you can see that in a lot of my paintings, these wiped away areas that I incorporate into the surface and into the imagery. You can see that also in the painting Indiscriminate Additions. A lot of the circular shapes in the foreground are broken up, and that's from that process of building up and wiping away. So those are just a lot of the aspects that I incorporate into my work, and I became really interested in the idea that you can have all these things going well for you in life, and then maybe one element is taken away, or one element falls, causing part of your experiences to collapse in life. So I painted the painting The Deliberate Accident, which is basically like a pile of rubble. And it's all my same elements, but thinking about that idea of if one is removed or one thing isn't going right, what happens then? So I have that image. It's still very energetic and it still has structure, but it's basically a collapsed element. So then I was taking that idea in my newer work, and I'm thinking about how can you have this pile of rubble start to grow or develop. So attributing or likening it to the idea in life where you can have all these successes that are going well and one thing is just not. So how do you portray this contradiction? How do you have things constantly growing and collapsing at the same time? How can one entity be moving up and down at the same time? So in phase 2, I'm sort of working with that idea where I have this sort of pile of rubble that is gaining height, but it's also looks like it's falling at the same time. And that's something I'm really interested in now in thinking about the contradictions in life and trying to find balance and peace within that space internally. So my newest piece is a little bit of a different take on that. It's called Merry-Go-Round, and it's really taking the idea of the carousel and how you have this one strong entity, but then simultaneously it has individual parts that are constantly moving up and down. And it's structured and it's stable, but I like that idea of one being having ups and downs and visually portraying that as well. So overall, I just hope that the viewer can take this idea of balance and fragile balance and relate that to their own experiences in life and just sort of find the beauty or the peace within that process of struggle.